Ronda Rousey wasn't just a fighter, she was a storm. She broke arms, broke records, and if you disrespected her, she never forgot. In a sport where fake beef sells tickets, Ronda's rivalries came from somewhere real. The cold stare before the bell, the refusal to touch gloves, the silence after the armbar snap. Every feud was personal. Every grudge felt permanent. In this video, we're counting down the 5 fighters Ronda Rousey truly hated. From betrayal in the gym, to disrespect on national TV, to words she never forgave. These weren't manufactured feuds for press conferences. These were enemies she carried in her soul. And number 1, that hatred nearly broke her. Let's step into the fire. Before Ronda Rousey ever became a household name, she already had an enemy. Miesha Tate wasn't just another opponent. She was the catalyst for the most bitter, personal, and enduring feud of Ronda's MMA career. It began in Strikeforce, long before the bright lights of the UFC came calling. Back then, Ronda was the brash newcomer, just 4 professional fights in. Miesha was the champion, the established name. And when Ronda called her out, it wasn't just to climb the rankings, it was war. The tension wasn't scripted, it wasn't manufactured for press conferences or ticket sales. Ronda genuinely disliked Miesha. She said it outright in interviews. "I don't like her as a person." It wasn't just about titles, it was about respect, loyalty, and image. Ronda believed Miesha played the media game while throwing shade behind the scenes, and the animosity only deepened when the UFC absorbed Strikeforce, turning their beef into must-watch drama. When they finally clashed inside the octagon at UFC 168, the world was watching. The handshake refused. Ronda extended her hand. Miesha smiled and walked right past. That moment was iconic, but the fight that followed was even more brutal. Ronda won by armbar, of course, but it wasn't quick. She made Miesha suffer through 3 rounds of punishment. Some fans said she prolonged it out of spite. Ronda later admitted, "I could have ended it in the first. I wanted to hurt her. That's the truth." The hatred didn't end with the fight. Ronda said Miesha represented everything she despised about the fight game. Being fake, being political, being polished for the cameras, but petty behind them. And Miesha, for her part, never backed down. She accused Ronda of being arrogant, of lacking humility. "She's a mean girl," Miesha once said, plain and simple. Even today, years later, the energy between them still sparks whenever they're in the same interview, on the same panel, or mentioned in the same breath. This feud wasn't about rankings or belts, it was about identity, and it shaped how the world saw Ronda Rousey as a cold, ruthless force who fought with emotion burning in her veins. If Miesha Tate was the rival Ronda loved to beat, Cris Cyborg was the one she refused to touch. Because in her eyes, Cyborg wasn't a legitimate fighter, she was a fraud. Ronda made that clear from the beginning, refusing to call her by name and instead referring to her as that steroid cheat. For Ronda, this wasn't about weight classes or matchmaking politics. This was about principle. Ronda stood firm. She would never reward someone who, in her words, cheated their whole career. The feud burned hot from the sidelines. They never fought, but their words clashed constantly. Ronda accused Cyborg of ducking random drug tests, of juicing her way through competition, and even of endangering the integrity of women's MMA. "She's been abusing steroids so long, she's probably got a bigger jaw than most of the guys I train with," Ronda joked in one infamous interview. The fans laughed, but the venom behind the words was unmistakable. Cyborg, on the other hand, begged for the fight. She tried to make it happen at 140 pounds. She posted memes. She mocked Ronda's acting career. And when Ronda finally lost to Holly Holm, Cyborg was among the loudest voices celebrating. "Now you know how it feels," she tweeted. But Ronda never engaged. In fact, when asked years later if she regretted not fighting Cyborg, Ronda responded, "Why would I? You don't reward cheaters." This wasn't just about legacy. Ronda saw herself as a symbol of clean, technical excellence. Cyborg, to her, was everything wrong with the sport. Even Dana White fed the fire, once saying Cyborg looked like Wanderlei Silva in a dress. It was cruel, it was controversial, and it sold millions of pay-per-views in tension alone. The twist? After Ronda was out of the sport, Cyborg rose as a champion, building her own legacy. But fans never forgot the matchup that never happened, and Ronda never forgot the woman she refused to legitimize. To this day, It remains one of the biggest what-ifs in MMA history, and one of the most vicious non-fights ever recorded. Sometimes hate doesn't grow over time. Sometimes it ignites in an instant. That's exactly what happened when Bethe Correia crossed the line with Ronda Rousey. In the lead-up to their 2015 title fight, Bethe didn't just trash talk, she hit below the belt. She mocked Ronda's family. She questioned her mental health. And most infamously, she said, "I hope she doesn't kill herself after I beat her." Ronda's father had died by suicide when she was just 8 years old. Fans were stunned. Ronda? She went silent. No media explosion, no public meltdown, just a cold, calculated glare. The response came in the octagon. At UFC 190, Ronda walked down Bethe like a ghost. No glove touch, no wasted movement, just a brutal 34-second destruction. And as Bethe lay on the canvas, dazed and battered, Ronda stood over her and whispered, "Don't cry." The cameras caught it, and it went viral. Later, Ronda explained, "I wanted to let her know the damage she did with her words, that there are things you don't joke about." But she never forgave her. Even in post-fight interviews, the anger in her voice was unmistakable. "Some people deserve to be humbled," she said, "and some people should have kept their mouths shut." What made this feud unique was the speed of its rise and the coldness of its conclusion. Ronda didn't hate Bethe the way she hated Miesha or Cyborg, but the level of personal disgust was arguably deeper. It was about honor, about family, and about crossing a line so far you can't ever come back from it. Bethe never recovered her career. Ronda's words followed her. Fans booed her. Sponsors left. The knockout wasn't just physical, it was reputational. And it reminded the world that Ronda Rousey wasn't just a fighter. She was someone who turned her fury into consequences. Real ones. If there was ever a name that made Ronda Rousey's voice tighten, it was Holly Holm. Not because Ronda hated her before the fight, but because of what happened during and after. This wasn't a personal rivalry at first. Holm had no trash talk, no Twitter jabs, no history. She was respectful, quiet, and focused. But the moment she kicked Ronda's head into oblivion at UFC 193, something broke. It wasn't just a loss. It was the unraveling of an icon. Ronda walked into that octagon in Australia as a wrecking machine. She had finished her last 3 opponents in a combined 64 seconds. She was the face of the UFC, the invincible queen. But Holly wasn't intimidated. She had been a 19-time boxing champion. She knew what pressure looked like, and she knew how to dismantle hype. The head kick heard around the world dropped Ronda in front of 56,000 stunned fans. But it was the fallout that really stung. Memes flooded the internet. Athletes mocked her. Talk shows turned the KO into punchlines. Holly Holm became the hero, humble, soft-spoken, gracious in victory. And Ronda, she became a symbol of shattered invincibility. In her first interview after the loss, Ronda admitted she contemplated suicide. She told Ellen DeGeneres she felt like she had no purpose without being undefeated. "What am I anymore if I'm not this?" she asked, choking back tears. She said Travis Brown, her future husband, was the only one who kept her from going over the edge. The bitterness toward Holly didn't come from trash talk. It came from the fallout. Ronda couldn't even bring herself to congratulate Holm afterward. She avoided interviews, disappeared for over a year, and when she came back, she never spoke Holly's name unless asked. Even then, she did so with clipped words and lingering pain in her eyes. Holm had done what no one else had. She dismantled the myth. She did it with grace, and that somehow made it worse. To Ronda, it wasn't just about the belt. It was about humiliation on the biggest stage imaginable, and she never got the chance to avenge it. Amanda Nunes didn't just beat Ronda Rousey, she obliterated her. UFC 207 was supposed to be Ronda's grand return, her redemption arc, the comeback of the century. But Amanda had other plans, and in just 48 seconds, she turned Ronda's return into a nightmare. From the opening bell, Amanda marched forward with cold precision. She blasted Ronda with jab-cross combinations that snapped her head back like a bobblehead. And Ronda, who hadn't fought in over a year, looked stunned, almost paralyzed. She never got into rhythm, never threw back with purpose. The referee stepped in as Amanda screamed triumph, and Ronda stood, wide-eyed, bleeding, and motionless. But what fueled Ronda's hatred wasn't just the loss, it was the mockery. After the fight, Amanda posted memes of Ronda with the words, "Bring back Mike Tyson, the queen is broken." She mocked Ronda's Hollywood career. She tweeted, "I told you she couldn't take a punch." And worst of all, she said Ronda was overhyped from the beginning, that she was never the best, just protected. Ronda never responded publicly, but insiders said she was furious. This wasn't just another defeat, it was her final memory inside the cage, and it was one soaked in embarrassment. Ronda vanished again, this time for good. No press, no post-fight statement. She walked out of the sport and never looked back. In later interviews, Amanda doubled down. "She had no business being in the cage with me," she told Ariel Helwani. "She got famous, but I'm the real champion. That wasn't just salt in the wound, it was gasoline." Ronda never gave Amanda credit, not in public, not in private. Her silence spoke volumes. Amanda wasn't a rival built over time. She was the executioner who slammed the final nail in Ronda's MMA coffin. And for Ronda, that's something that likely still burns. Most fans don't know that Ronda Rousey once felt betrayed not by an opponent, but by someone behind the scenes. Tito Ortiz wasn't someone she fought, but she hated him just the same. Because in her mind, he wasn't loyal. He was a sellout. Here's the backstory. When Ronda was on her rise, the UFC was still negotiating how to present and grow women's MMA. Tito was managing Cris Cyborg at the time. And instead of supporting Ronda's rise as a fellow MMA legend, he used his platform to bash her constantly, publicly. Tito repeatedly said Ronda was not even top 5 in the world. He said she was ducking Cyborg. He went on record accusing Dana White of creating a fake star and questioned whether Ronda had the skills to be champion. Ronda was livid. "He knows what he's doing," she said in a backstage interview. "He's playing politics, and it's gross." The betrayal cut deep. Ronda had respected Tito as a pioneer of the sport. She once called him one of the guys who helped put MMA on the map. But when he sided with Cyborg and turned their feud into a personal vendetta, she flipped. "He's either stupid or bought," she said. "And I don't think he's stupid." What made this hate unique was how it happened outside the cage. Ronda's anger toward Tito wasn't about punches. It was about loyalty, about a veteran of the sport choosing to prop up her enemy for personal gain. Years later, Tito tried to downplay it. He claimed he was just managing his fighter, that it was business, but Ronda never softened. In her book, she refers to unnamed old men in suits who tried to sabotage her rise. Insiders say Tito was one of them. He never fought her. But Ronda hated Tito Ortiz with a passion. Because in her eyes, he didn't just question her ability, he tried to erase her legacy before it even began. The rivalry between Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate wasn't just business. It was bitter, it was real, and it might be the most iconic feud in women's MMA history. It all began when Ronda burst onto the scene in Strikeforce. Miesha was the reigning champion. She had the belt, the spotlight, the respect, and then Ronda, loud and brash, demanded a title shot after just a handful of pro fights. The MMA world was stunned by her arrogance, but Ronda didn't care. "I'm not here to be liked," she said. "I'm here to rip her arm off." From the first press conference, the hatred was undeniable. Ronda called Miesha overrated, said she looked like a Hooters waitress, and predicted a first-round armbar. Miesha fired back, calling Ronda disrespectful, delusional, and undeserving. The tension wasn't hype, it was personal. Their first fight in 2012 ended just like Ronda promised, with a gruesome first-round armbar. Miesha's elbow bent back in ways it wasn't supposed to, and yet the feud only grew. When the UFC absorbed Strikeforce, Dana White used their rivalry to help launch women's MMA. He knew they had fire. In 2013, they coached opposite each other on The Ultimate Fighter, and that's when the world saw how deep the animosity ran. Ronda mocked Miesha's every move. She refused to shake her hand, screamed at her from across the gym. "I don't like her. "I'll never like her," Ronda said, "and I'm not here to pretend." Miesha, to her credit, tried to remain composed, but she later admitted Ronda's mind games got to her. "She's the most disrespectful person I've ever met," Miesha told media. "It's not just competition. She goes below the belt every time." Their rematch in 2013 at UFC 168 was a war. Miesha lasted until the third round, making her the first woman to survive past round 1 against Ronda. But again, it ended in an armbar. Ronda refused to shake her hand afterward. The crowd booed. She didn't flinch. Years later, Miesha got the belt after Ronda's fall. But even then, Ronda refused to acknowledge her. When asked if she would ever fight Miesha again, she said, "I already beat her twice. What else is there to prove?" The disdain never faded. Miesha was one of the few fighters who got under Ronda's skin and stayed there. Shayna Baszler was never just a teammate. She was Ronda Rousey's ride or die, a founding member of the original 4 horsewomen of MMA. The group, Ronda, Shayna, Jessamine Duke, and Marina Shafir, trained together, lived together, and supported each other through the Wild West of early women's MMA. To the outside world, they were sisters, but behind the scenes, cracks formed, and those cracks became a bitter, unspoken rift. When Ronda rose to fame, Shayna wasn't far behind, an early pioneer with a dangerous ground game and legit street credibility. But Shayna's career never exploded like Ronda's. While Ronda got main events and magazine covers, Shayna struggled in the UFC. Losses piled up, sponsors dried up. She eventually faded from the roster without fanfare. Still, she stayed loyal, even followed Ronda into pro wrestling. But something shifted when the spotlight turned. Ronda got fast-tracked to WWE pay-per-views, main events, championship gold. Shayna, meanwhile, was grinding in NXT, WWE's developmental territory, proving herself the hard way. She paid her dues for years, while Ronda leapfrogged the process. Then came the betrayal. In 2023, during a surprise WWE feud, Shayna Baszler turned on Ronda on screen, but insiders whispered it mirrored real-life tension. Shayna cut a promo calling Ronda entitled, disrespectful, and said she never earned this world. The line felt too real to be scripted. Fans began speculating, was this a storyline or a real grudge disguised as drama? Ronda stayed quiet, but interviews after the feud wrap revealed tension that couldn't be ignored. Shayna admitted she was tired of being in Ronda's shadow, and fans noticed, after that match, the horsewomen all stopped being seen together. No group photos, no shout-outs, nothing. Ronda Rousey rarely lets people in, and when she does, betrayal hits deeper. Losing a fight hurts. Losing a friend? That's something she doesn't forgive easily. Shayna Baszler may not have meant to burn that bridge completely, but in Ronda's world, loyalty is everything, and that loyalty, she feels, was shattered. Their love story began during one of Ronda's darkest periods. After her devastating loss to Holly Holm, Ronda was spiraling, emotionally shattered, isolated, and humiliated. Travis became her anchor. They trained together, recovered together, and eventually married on August 28, 2017, in a quiet ceremony in Hawaii. For a time, everything seemed peaceful, but under the surface, cracks began to show. Whispers started in the MMA community. Travis was once a top 10 heavyweight, but his career took a nosedive. Loss after loss piled up. While Ronda transitioned to WWE stardom, Travis faded. Fans noticed he was often by her side, at training camps, backstage, in promotional content, but never really in focus. Some began calling him Mr. Rousey, mocking how his legacy was reduced to being Ronda's +1. It didn't help when old controversies resurfaced. Allegations from Travis's past, unrelated to Ronda, cast a dark cloud. Though Ronda stood by him publicly, insiders whispered that tensions rose behind the scenes. She was protecting her image, shielding herself from PR disaster, and all while dealing with the emotional scars left from her brutal exit from MMA. What made things worse was how intertwined their professional lives became. When Ronda stepped into WWE, Travis was there, but not as a superstar. He was on the sideline, sometimes appearing in in backstage segments or coaching sessions, never quite reclaiming the spotlight he once held. And over time, fans began to speculate. Was he holding her back? Was his presence another weight around her neck? Another reminder of the past she was trying to escape? By 2023, their appearances together grew more sparse. Ronda even made cryptic remarks in interviews, statements like, "Not everyone wants the same thing forever," and "Sometimes support feels like a cage." She never named names, but the emotional distance was clear. Observers started noticing she no longer referenced Travis during major interviews. On social media, posts featuring him dwindled. Some wondered, had the Warrior Queen grown tired of feeling like someone else's crutch? Whether Travis Brown truly let Ronda down or simply became a painful reflection of who she once was remains unclear. But what is clear, even the strongest fighters can find themselves alone in a partnership, especially when that partnership begins to blur the lines between love, dependence, and identity. Ronda may never say it out loud, but fans who've followed her journey closely can't help but feel like there's more pain behind her eyes than the world will ever know. This might be the most unexpected entry on the list, but Ronda Rousey's greatest grudge might be against the very people who built her up, the media. In the early days, the press loved her. ESPN put her on magazine covers. Late-night hosts praised her charisma. Journalists called her the female Mike Tyson. But after the Holly Holm loss, the tone changed instantly, and Ronda never forgot it. Headlines turned brutal, exposed, overrated, done. The same voices who celebrated her dominance now dissected her fall like vultures. Satirical skits mocked her footwork. Sports analysts questioned whether she'd ever been skilled to begin with. "I went from being the most beloved fighter on the planet to the most hated overnight," Ronda said during a 2018 interview. "The media turned on me so fast, it made my head spin." Her frustration boiled over during her WWE run. She refused to answer MMA questions during press tours. She shut down journalists who mentioned Amanda Nunes. "I don't owe you anything," she once snapped at a reporter. "You all took your shots when I was down." Ronda's husband, Travis Brown, once said she felt betrayed by the sport. Not the fans, not the UFC, but the narrative machine around it. "She gave everything," he said, "and when she lost, they tore her apart." Even years later, Ronda rarely does long-form interviews. She avoids podcasts, declines UFC commentary. Some say it's because she's bitter. Others say she's just done being a headline. But one thing's for sure, Ronda Rousey may have hated fighters like Tate and Cyborg, but she despised the media that turned on her the moment she showed weakness. In her mind, they didn't just report the fall, they celebrated it.